talking my lecherous voice all episode. Welcome to the spoiler room. We're talking about Under the Skin. Oh yeah. All right. Oh, there we go. I already made Paul cough once, so we're good now. All right, let's get started. This is gonna be fun. All right. And welcome to the spoiler room. Yes, today we are taking a look at a film that was released on March 14th, 2014, and it made the indie scene, and it is the movie that is known by many as Where Black Widow Gets Naked. Yes, I'm talking about Under the Skin. And tonight, to talk about this very interesting science fiction indie film, I have a couple of great crew members joining me tonight. First off, we have Mr. Cole Meredith. Hello, Cole.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, Paul. Good to be hanging with you guys.
Glad to have you here to talk about this most interesting indie film. And next to Cole is, of course, the Bowtie Man himself, Mr. Paul Salzer. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Cole. I hope you guys are ready to talk some really interesting stuff tonight.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah, we are talking about a very interesting film, a film that's actually been quite polarized in the film industry. There's a number of people who really hate this film, think it sucks, and then there's others who really, really love the film. And the film Under the Skin, if you're not familiar with it, is about a mysterious young woman who seduces lonely men in the evening hours of Scotland. However, events lead her to begin a process of self-discovery. Yeah, you see, she's not quite of this earth, and she lures these men for their otherworldly purposes. But soon, after a certain event, she starts to come to a realization about herself and the planet she's living on, and makes her question a lot of things about her purpose in life. I think it's a good summary of it. And Paul, we'll start with you first. What did you think of Under the Skin?
Truthfully, it took me nearly an hour into this film before I actually started liking it as a story. Up to that point, the film kind of sustained me by kind of forcing me to go and say, what is this film about? What was that scene about? What is that scene about? Oh my God. And I guess my biggest thing is I wish they would have gotten to the point a lot sooner, and then I probably would have enjoyed the movie a lot more. I did enjoy it, but like I said, it took me an hour in a nearly 2-hour long film before I actually did enjoy watching it as a story. Up to that point, it was more of an artistic thing that was like, ooh, I'm wise in the artistic ways, and I don't want to feel embarrassed by saying it sucks. That's pretty much how I felt.
Yeah, this is definitely a definitive art house film. That is for sure. There's no arguing that point at all. This is definitely an artsy sci-fi film. Cole, how about you? When you first saw this Under the Skin, how'd you feel about it?
Well, it's a tone poem. It's like a tone poem of a film. It's very lyrical. It's about sexuality and humanity and feminine strength and vulnerability, sort of wrapped up in a hazy sci-fi shell with some pretty suitable feminist strength at its core. Really, though, when it's all said and done, it's I consider it to be a pretty mind-blowing horror film. It circles around emotions of apprehension, shock, and tragedy. I mean, Jesus, the sequence at the beach alone, where Scarlett's character watches the demise of this family, then takes the man who tried to help them prisoner after bashing his skull in with a rock, is like one of the most wicked and dreadfully beautiful sequences I've seen in a film in years. A decade from now, I'm not sure if it's going to be talked about in the high ranks of like disturbing sci-fi horror classics like The Thing or Cronenberg's The Fly, but it should be, man. There's a lot of body horror to go around here, And the other thing I'd like to say is just like how much this film sets you up, like from the beginning. I mean, the opening actually reminded me of 2001 a tad. It just it's just awe-inspiring, and it sets the tone for the whole film. I mean, that opening is somehow otherworldly and yet distinctly human at once. You know, is that a tunnel of light? Is it the birth of Scarlett's character, or the death of the woman they find in the trenches in the following scene? Or both? You know, is it a cluster of planets? Is it like a birth canal? Is it an eclipse? It's just a stunning prelude, and the whole film follows through with that. Lots of sequences, including that opening, have absolutely no audio at all, which I think is a really daring move. I mean, not even quiet audio. They just drop the audio out altogether. It focuses on environment instead of action. And, you know, it's very patient, which may make lots of viewers get anxious or fidgety, but not me. I appreciated the movie's sort of forbearing pace. And I hate it when filmmakers rush through things. You know, I not always. I shouldn't say I hate it. But I do appreciate when a director gives you full measure and isn't afraid to take his time. And that means a lot to me. It really does. Those movies have a special place in my heart. And Jonathan Glazer did some wonderful things with this movie, for sure.
Well, this as a film like this would, you imagine, there's a lot of things that behind the scenes stuff involved in this film, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, it's one that makes you think, and it's one that is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I watched it and I dug it for its oddity. And you're right, that first, you don't get a proper line of dialogue until 13 minutes in. Is the first.
Wow, really? I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
But,
go ahead, Paul.
I was just gonna say, but that's very true. But listen to it with headphones on, a good pair of stereo headphones, and pop up the DTS sound, because you will actually hear her trying to learn English, and going through the phonetics of speaking. Like she'll start saying just the sounds of, she'll start sounding out consonants.
Oh,
Yep.
there is that. I remember
Yes.
that now. You're right.
But
yeah.
there's not actually a line of dialogue. But yeah,
There's
there is
no line,
noise.
yes.
Yeah, she's making noises, so she is learning, which you know, you when we meet up with her first in the beginning, we get this really kind of abstract sequence that eventually leads to a very close up of an eye. Makes you wonder what exactly you're looking at, which, you know, that pulls you right in, and it kind of sets the tone of this film, letting you know you're not getting a normal narrative with this film, folks, at least for most of the movie. And you know, it opens with a guy in a motorcycle who just finds the dead. Now the thing is, with the body of the girl he finds, she was actually alive. At first I thought she was dead, and they stick her into the free Wi-Fi candy van. Well, free candy van. My kid calls a van like that free Wi-Fi and candy now for millennials. But he sticks her in the back of that van, and they use her wardrobe basically for Scarlett Johansson's character to wear. But there's a bit of a tear. So was that girl not actually dead? Cole, was she? Were we meant to believe that that girl that they stripped for her clothing was still alive?
Well, I took it as she was one of their kind and had met the same fate that Scarlett met in a much gruesomer way later. But, you know, it's no coincidence the clothes fit her perfectly, almost as if they all have the same shell. And I just got the feeling that it was kind of like passing the torch along. Okay, you know, there's one recruit down, here's another. But yeah, I don't think she was dead. I mean, there was that tear there for sure, which could mean a number of things. I mean, how would you kill some, you know, otherworldly life form? I don't want to say alien necessarily, but how would you kill some otherworldly life form? Maybe, you know, if she had been, you know, God forbid, raped or left for dead in this ditch by some guy, certainly, you know, the alien life form might have a way of going on as opposed to being torched into ashes. You know what I mean? So that's the way I took it. You know, I've only seen the movie twice, once when it was first came out and then once this afternoon. But that was my first impression. Even the first time I watched it, by the end of the film, I was like, oh, that was, one of these beings. And
Right.
she, the torch was being passed to Scarlet.
Right. And well, she's even titled as the Dead Woman, so it may very well have been like that. Paul, what about you? Live or dead was she?
Originally dead, but hearing Cole's explanation, I like that. I like
Yeah.
that a lot. I would go for that because it make the story have an extra level that would be very enjoyable to me. So yeah, thumbs up to Cole there.
You're right. It would make it an extra level, and by putting that into focus, it would fit the rest of this film, because the story that you get, well, initially on the surface, you have the story of this female, Scarlett Johansson, who is able to, not very difficultly, but is able to lure men to their, a dimension or wherever, so that they can be used or consumed, basically. Because that, as you watch this film, yes, this is spoiler room, folks. As you watch this film, you realize the purpose that these men are serving, why she's luring them to them. But and so that sounds like it's a female empowerment type of thing. But now that you mention it, with that female in the beginning, the character in the beginning, she's not actually empowered. She's a tool in this. The impression I got with it, and it sounds bad, but in the beginning, until she looks in the mirror, where we get that kind of start of journey to self-realization,
Yeah.
she's actually a tool being used by the guys, because all the guys were motorcycle riders. And he's the one that picks the original girl up in the beginning, and they basically are using the ladies as a lure to get these guys to get the meat. So while it's making a statement about how weak guys are to be lured in by her, I got the impression she was being used as a tool, as a lure, basically, to reel in the fish to be consumed. Paul, what do you think about that?
I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I did a little bit of looking back at the source material, and it is one of the few things that they did get from the original novel.
Okay.
By Mr. Faber, and she was very much a tool. She actually worked on her planet, a corporation, and all she was there to doing was to lure men in. She in that source material that she actually did spend some time to fatten them up, and we were delicacies. But it did have an element of female empowerment as well, because she honestly loved her job. She actually had to physically transform. It wasn't like it is in the movie, and they did surgery on her, and she, in her mind, she kind of looked hideous, like she disfigured her body so that she could do her job, but she loved her job, and so she empowered herself in doing this thing, because what she was doing was basically giving her people the necessary food, even though ultimately I think that food went to the elite of her planet. Yeah. So, well.
And that's the impression I got, is that the guys who were who set her up basically with the van and the clothing, were using her for their own food, because you never see her actually eat at all.
She tried to eat, and then she got sick.
Well, yeah, after she started on trying to figure out exactly what she actually was. Cole, how about you? Did you get that kind of duality, where at one hand you get the impression, yes, we're making a statement about female empowerment and how weak guys are and how you can lure them, but at the same time you realize too, she's actually being used to lure these guys in, and kind of being used as a object rather than an individual?
Yeah, I think it could be seen either way. I'm not familiar with the book,
right?
And I was sure not to. Just for me, after the first time I saw this, and even tonight, I read a couple little reviews, but then realized it was going to kind of sway me.
Sure.
And this is just one of those films I'd rather just, be a purist and just love the movie, because I do love it a lot. So I think you could see it either way. I mean, there's two sides to it. You know, there's that really creepy scene where the one guy, again, I hate to use the word alien, but he's just kind of circling her. This is after she's taken out a couple guys and maybe becoming a little self-aware.
Right.
And he's just examining the hell out of her in a really creepy way, like she's some commodity. Then again, you know, you could see it as they know how dangerous this planet is. You know, they know what specifically the men on this planet are like, and to go haywire and sort of go off on your own could be entirely dangerous. You know, within the context of the movie, not taking the original novel into account, you could see it as that. Like by the end, you know, when she meets her fate, and there's that really lonely shot of the gentleman, the lead alien guy, sort of staring off into the mountains, you could see it as he was like, oh Jesus, again, you know, this happened again. So I think, you know, in the context of the movie, you could see it either way. I go back and forth with it, but you know, the key part is when it's revealed that there are 4 or 5 of these motorcyclists, and they all spread out looking for her. That's a key scene, and you realize, oh Jesus, you know, these guys really are maybe pimps in a certain sense, you know.
And that's the thing, and I think it's supposed to be left a little bit ambiguous. There's a lot of ambiguity in this film.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I love ambiguity. I don't like films that will hold your hand. Maybe a little bit too much for a lot of people, but you know, you get no explanation of the beings that there actually are, and you know, and it's through visuals. You get not exposition, that you get kind of why they're luring these guys into, but at the same time, you don't get a whole lot of dialogue from her as to, you know, exposition either, to figure out purpose of, is she doing this voluntarily? Is she a tool? You know, empowerment in the beginning. Were the guys who she might, I guess you could say, work for, did they have her a specific way to protect her, or was it that they didn't look, like you said, there was a scene where she's being circled and looked not nice upon, basically. The guy's just basically studying her for almost like flaws or something.
Yeah.
You know, I love that, because I kept going back and forth going, okay, is she doing this voluntarily? Is it empowerment? Is she a tool? Are they doing it to protect her? You know, like at the end, maybe they had her only in the routine because, you know, they didn't want her to venture out, because as, you know, you and Paul both talked about how deadly human males are, you know, and maybe it was for the purpose of protection. It's really hard to say in this what, you know, where the position actually was for her. But what we do know is, and I think it's captured in the cinematography, and you don't realize it till that halfway point when she lures the guy who apparently that actor actually does have that condition, the with the face.
Oh, Adam Pearson. Yeah, he does.
He has that the actual condition, and you know, when she kind of actually takes pity on him, he doesn't become, you know, the frozen dinner like everyone else. But before she was able to rescue him from the black goo, she looked in the mirror, and if you notice, that's the first time she actually looks in a mirror. Paul, did you notice that was the actual first time she looked in the mirror? I mean, she's driving around in the van, and we get shots from the rear view mirror, but she doesn't actually look at the rear view mirror during that section.
Yes, I did notice that. Yes.
And so what was it, do you think, about her seeing herself that maybe triggered this, going, oh, you know, maybe I'm something more than just a lure?
I actually didn't take it as that. I didn't take that scene as being her realizing that she was, you know, what she was. I looked at it as more of, she realized just how much she looked like us, because, and not physically, because it was fitting that she changed her ideas uh, after meeting the person with the physical deformity, which throughout her entire conversation she didn't even seem to notice. I always looked at it as she's looking inside of him because honestly, that's what that's the food. If you noticed in when the first guy got turned into food, his skin was left there as a,
Right.
as a husk. And so they didn't need that. They didn't look at the skin as being an important thing at all. It was what's inside, and that's what I took from that whole scene was that she looked at him and saw something, and then when she looked in the mirror, she wasn't actually looking at her physical form. She was realizing that the person inside her was turning human, and that's why she decided to leave. And that's how I interpreted the scene. It might be totally wrong, but
No, I don't think there is a wrong with
Yeah.
this. In all honesty, Cole, how about you with that scene where she comes to realization one way or another that she might be human or whatnot, and she's staring at the mirror, and she wakens up a little bit, or starts to have an awakening and rescues the would be food.
I agree entirely with what Paul said. It has
Uh-huh.
it has a lot to do with the gentleman, a really gifted actor, and brave of him to do this, especially with the nudity and everything. It it really ties into his physical condition and what that incited in her, because you have a story that where at some point, in a way, the antagonist becomes the protagonist, which is to say she does some genuinely horrible things in the first act, and she breaks away from that in a certain sense, and you begin to feel for her and worry about her and follow through the story with her, as opposed to worry about these random guys showing up at her truck window. And that character is key, to why she pivots. And as you said, Mark, the first time she sees her reflection, I think she begins to make the association. Well, she begins to realize the difference between body and soul. If I can get away with using the word soul in a film like this, that's so ambiguous. But I think that is key. I think the movie, in large part, is about the search for soul in a corrupt environment. And I think, yeah, this gentleman's physical condition directly results or ties into that long stretch where she looks in the mirror. I mean, it's not a throwaway shot, as you mentioned, Mark. It's what is it, 2-3 minutes of screen time, or just staring at her reflection,
It's
figuring things out.
It's at least a couple minutes where she's just staring into the mirror.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just trying to highlight what Paul said in some way,
Yeah.
because he summed it up well, and you're right as well, Mark. That scene is absolutely key. That whole section of the movie is key. But when she looks in the mirror, it's really when the movie begins to shift, quite a bit.
Oh yeah, it shifts. The story becomes a little more cohesive, if you will, and you start to get, but you still got to pay attention. I mean, you're of what's going on, and after she comes to that realization, she still found out she can't eat sweets.
Oh, God.
Also, the scene right before that
Yeah.
was significant in my mind too, because it was if I can recall, except for the beginning scene, that was the first time that she was fully basically naked to us, and in film terms, that was, she was bearing it all to us as an audience, and that was the first time that I saw the alien as being totally, without any protection. She was just, totally naked and truthful of what she was, and that was the scene immediately prior to the mirror scene.
Well, the
So-
mirror scene comes later. The
But-
mirror scene.
But isn't it after? Isn't it after she?
No, well, there's two. There's the mirror scene where after she drops the gentleman into the goo, she's walking down the stairs and she's staring at herself in the mirror.
I realize that, but the scene right
And then-
before that, when he falls into the goo, was the first time, because I think the prior guys, she had at least some article of clothing on. This was the first time that I remember her taking off every bit of clothing that she had.
Right,
Did you notice that?
I thought she still had some clothing on. Maybe I am missing remembering, but
Well, if I didn't, you can edit it all out. I mean,
no, it's okay. No,
with the gentleman and with the physical condition. I forget the character's name. I'm just going to call him by his actor's name, Adam Pearson. Gifted. Right. That was the first time that she was entirely naked. Yeah, and boy, we're really on this, aren't we, guys?
Well, we apparently didn't.
No, I mean just in terms of never mind.
Well, the film though, the scenes kind of blend together. So for me, I didn't quite remember it because it wasn't, I think, as focused, and maybe it was because you do see her naked at the beginning, getting the clothes off of the quote unquote dead woman.
That's accurate.
But that's what I mean. That's what I mean. In that scene, she's coming to our planet from wherever worldly dimension she comes from, either if an alien or from an alternate dimension. So she is new to the world, and then therefore, this naked individual coming into the world like we do when we're born. And then up to that point, you didn't see her fully that way again, newly reborn, fresh baby, until that scene. She looks at herself in the mirror, and then that's the turning point,
Well, she's clothed though. She's clothed though when she looks at herself in the mirror.
I know that, but I mean, prior to that scene, that's the turning point for her, and for us, that's the indicator that hey, she's changing now.
Yeah, well, like you said, for me, it wasn't even that because I felt she was still in lure mode, though you could tell it was slightly different. For me, it was after that scene. For me, it was the turning point. But yeah, you're right. That is the start of her turning because she makes herself the most vulnerable to this individual. And it a little bit of trivia about the guys that she's lured up until him, because he's the last guy she actually lures. Those were actual real people off the streets. They weren't told that they were part of a movie until after they get in the van. But up until that point, the guys that she's asking for directions for in Scotland, those aren't actors.
So what do they do then? What does the director be like? Okay, look, sign these release forms. You have to get naked.
Well, actually, wow. There were a lot more, because I remember the story coming out later. It's in the trivia bits for IMDb, but I remember
that's fascinating.
I remember reading an article about that as well, though, that it was one of those where they filmed it and they basically had hidden cameras within the van, and you can kind of tell the way it's shot. But the people that they came up to and talked to were real folks, and then they'd get them when they get into the van. They told them, this is actually for a film, and then asked them, hey, we've got this next scene where you get totally naked with Scarlett Johansson on camera. Do you want to do that? And I'm sure they were found it hard to find people for that. Let's say that. I'm just being truthful. Okay.
No. I was just thinking that it explains the massive erections these gentlemen have.
Well, the first guy, I was like, wow, I don't think I've seen an indie film where, like, okay, he's not acting. But
it does take some guts, though, man. It really does. I was gonna do, for the last great horror movie, for the final showdown with Nebraska, I was gonna do that just in my underwear, and realized on the day, no way, I'm not doing this. Fuck that. So it does. It really. I mean, it takes some cojones, man. I give those guys a lot of credit, especially them not being professional actors. If that's the case, that's phenomenal. Like, wow, man.
That's what the story is. Now, like I said, it's indie films, and you kind of got to take it like that. But yeah, according to not only the trivia on IMDb, but also on an article I read, he had hidden cameras in the van and informed them afterwards that they were in a movie, and then it was up to them to
release it.
Yeah. So the men lured into the van were not actors. So that's I thought that was interesting, which also I think, I mean, this is the Scarlett Johansson show. This is her act. You know, I mean, she's in every scene, and I loved her performance in here. And it also shows her performance for thinking on the fly, because if she was luring these guys in, you've got to improv.
Mm-hmm.
If if these are true, not set up actors, the only person I think that was Adam Pearce, and the only reason they did that was because he didn't want to actually use special effects for the individual that makes her realize this. He wanted someone who actually had a condition, and so so I think that was probably the only the real actor. But the guys that her victims, yeah, those were supposedly just real people. So
that's I have a lot of respect for that. I really do. That only ups my respect for this film. I loved it before, but if that's true, man, this is like one of my favorite movies.
Well,
awesome.
the other respect I have for Scarlett Johansson in this is after Marvel world. Okay, this is after being introduced to the Marvel world, and this is a pretty bold move for an actress to take after being in films like that, to where she is in a number of scenes completely just naked to the world. And also that this is like a small indie film. To take on a film like this after doing such big films, I love when actors do that. Paul, what about you and Scarlett Johansson's performance in here in general, and taking a role like this after being in such big films?
I think that is like you said, a very bold move, and it shows that she really does enjoy her craft a lot, and I appreciate her a lot more hearing that. And yes, and as for her performance, I was totally captivated by her as well. I mean, she said some things, and how she said them. She spoke with her eyes quite a bit, I felt, and it draws you in. And I think that one guy, and now I appreciate it even better, because now of what you said, the guy even comments about her eyes, and it's so truthful that she does. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell this is a role she really wanted to do. And Cole, how about you with ScarJo's performance in here?
Well, she was, it sounds like a cliche to say, but she was pitch perfect. I mean, she was the perfect person to do this. I think, more than anything, this is the director's show and the cinematographer's show, and even Miko Levy's hypnotic insect-like score is really good. I mean, the cinematography somehow makes Earth look like an alien planet, and I think that's just astonishing work. But I think in terms of like her performance, there's no, taking anything away from it. I just have to kind of say, like, she owes it to herself to do this. I mean, she needs to do projects like this. Not to give anybody, of her level of brilliance career advice. That would be idiotic of me. But like Ryan Reynolds, when you're that good looking, you've got to take risks. You've got to branch out there. You do. Like Michael J. Fox, right off of Back to the Future, did stuff like Casualties of War, Light of Day, Bright Lights, Big City. None of these were huge hits. But they were all movies where the critics were like, wow, this guy can act, and he's not just going to ride on his looks for the rest of his life. And I think you really have to do that. The nudity was almost, the first time I watched it, because a friend of mine, I forget who, had mentioned, it's the only reason we're seeing it is, Scarlett Johansson is naked.
No, I don't buy that.
No, I know. Obviously, I don't. I really have so much respect for this movie, but and this is, I forget who told this to me. It was a friend of mine. But while I'm watching the movie, it didn't even really occur to me, and I'm not just saying that to say it. I became so wrapped up in the story that her nudity, even in the beginning, when she's stripping down that other being, I'd like to think it was one of her kind. It didn't really occur to me. And part of it was because, didn't she just go through all this stuff with the nude leaked photos and everything? Was everybody really that amped up to see her naked again. I don't know. I don't know. You guys know me. I'm not an exploitation guy per se. I love exploitation films as long as I don't have to be there on the set doing the shit. So I'm not really one to like seek out nudity or seek out blood splatterage or any of that. But to me, I mean, it fit the story, which is always what you need, whether it's nudity, sexuality, profanity, blood, guts on the wall. Does it suit the story? Are you trying to tell something? Or are you just trying to incite, an audience? Are you just trying to get butts in the seat so you can pay for a yacht? And to me, everything here fit. This was a story that really carried some weight. I mean, even watching it again today, I watched it with my headphones on at the tail end of my stepson's spring break. Just stay in the other room. I got to do this for my podcast. And my fiance got home. I timed it out so that it would be over when she got home so I could cook dinner. And I couldn't even talk to her. I mean, when she came home, she's just like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "This fucking movie is so powerful," And the nude scene to me fits. I actually when I was in the restroom, like brushing my teeth and stuff tonight before the show, I asked myself the question: Would this movie work without the nude scenes? I mean, would it still function? And I don't know that it would, because it's an important part of the film.
Well, it's the next level. It's the further level of her discovering who she really is, and exploring the change in her body. I mean, she goes from basically a drone type of individual to getting her identity, and part of her identity is is physical as well as mental. And yeah, I agree. I think it served a purpose. It wasn't just in there just to be in there. It does serve a purpose as far as the growth of the character and trying to understand who they really are. And I think the director actually handles the nudity in here fairly well. And it'd be the U.S. viewers, no offense to U.S. viewers, but the majority of the U.S. viewers who would be more hung up on it than European.
Yeah, absolutely.
Personally, because at least that's the way I feel. Paul, how about you with the nudity in here? You feel it served a purpose, or was it just exploitation?
No, I felt it was very necessary. As I mentioned before, to me, the nudity was a trigger, a signal to tell us that it's about bearing the inside. It's what's under the skin, and so it's truthful to the title, and so that's why I always looked at it as being that she's constantly evolving and as she starts to become more and more human, she's starting to bear more and more of herself, quite literally to us. And then at the end, when or the scene next, when she meets up with the guy that helps her out, kind of, and he basically has sex with her. There was another scene where again she's completely naked, and she's discovering a little bit about how her body works at that point. And then at the very, very end, you get to see her beyond naked, which is basically, the real her, truly naked for us to see. And that's why I do believe that the naked scenes are extremely important. To me, that was the point. That was the trigger to tell us, what's going on.
Right. Yeah. Because now that you mention it, now I'm seeing that now, where in the beginning, it's when she first arrives. Then we see her again when she comes to the realization of who she might really be, and that she really shouldn't be luring all these guys to their food. And then she's fully naked again just before she decides to try a romantic encounter with the guy she has an encounter with, because it's just before they actually have it. And then later, after the attempted, the rather disturbing attempted rape scene, is where she bears her. She ends up totally looking at herself.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's just so many layers and interesting angles to this film, and the cinematography I thought was just freaking fantastic in this film. Especially the scenes. I loved how they did the scenes when she would lure the guys, and as she would walk, they would sink. Uh, that cinematography, Paul. What'd you think about it throughout the film?
It was amazing. It's it's, and then the fact that also the room, they would show you more and more of the dilapidated dwelling that she lived in as they went along in the film too. And yeah, their choices were really really amazing. And then having them sink down, that's actually going to be my question that I brought along. Is it okay to ask it now?
Sure, we can do that now. Go ahead.
Okay, so that void abyss that the men are kind of walking toward her, and she's kind of tantalizing them and luring them even further. They keep sinking and sinking. I wanted to know what you guys thought of that. Is that void abyss real, or is it just a metaphor?
Ooh, good question. Cole, how about you first?
I think both. I mean,
Both?
I think yeah, I think it's both. I mean, I think it functions on two different levels. It's absolutely metaphorical, but obviously, I hope it's functioning on some bizarre sci-fi level as well. As one of you said earlier that their skin remains as their insides are ripped out, and I hadn't actually noticed that. I was trying to figure out exactly what was going on there. Not that I was entirely confused, but I didn't realize that maybe it was, not to use this analogy incorrectly, but some Hellraiser type thing, where it was just the skin kind of hanging there. But that actually visually rings accurate to me. So it is food. It actually helps me appreciate sort of the what you see level of that scene more. But on a metaphoric level, it works entirely. It works excellently. I mean, it's just the notion of falling under a sort of a sexual spell
Mm.
and just being submerged and hanging there in limbo as somebody else dresses and moves to the next partner is relevant and powerful, I think.
Yeah, I think it was metaphorical, meant to be metaphorical and literal because um, I think that was a chunk of the sci-fi angle because of the way they were. I think that was their actual process, was the fact of these guys start to sink down and then they're like marinated or they're soaked. They're soaked so their skin gets looser because the one guy that he runs into, who was the guy before him, the skin is looser, and then all of a sudden his insides get just sucked out, and so the skin is left. And so I think that's for real, but it is also working on another level of them getting falling into this seduction of her completely, and so into her that they aren't even bothered. They're sinking into this stuff,
Oh, so true, so true. Oh,
you know, because
yes.
they're entranced. But I think part of that too is the alien factor of her species, whoever they are, which some people have posited too, that apparently she's a like a legendary, actually supposed to be like a Selkie, I think it's called, or whatnot. It's apparently a Scottish
Hmm.
uh,
Oh yeah, I've read about, yeah.
a Scottish
Interesting.
being, which I'm not too educated with that. So I just it was something I ran across while looking more into this, in that because this is filmed in Scotland, that Selkie, yeah, I have it here. Selkies are mythological creatures found in Scottish, Irish, and Icelandic folklore. They are said to live as seals in the sea, but shed their skin to become human on land. And they're described as being a very beautiful in their human form and therefore having great seductive powers. So there is a theory that she might actually be one of these mythological creatures.
Sounds
Mm.
pertinent.
which could also, and that's what I love about this film is there's enough dialogue in here to make it feel natural, but at the same time, it is very minimalistic in its dialogue to where you don't get a lot of exposition of explanation of detail of what's going on. It's visual and interpretation, and we watch her character move along through this film, and as she discovers more about herself and the world she's in, it gets scarier. I'm not sure what's going on there, but let's go to Cole's question. Cole, did you have a question or a topic or something you wanted to bring up?
Sure. Yeah, man. Well, this ties into, I guess, I'll just open up with a couple little quick things that didn't necessarily bug me, but I feel like perhaps the movie paints itself in too broad of strokes at times. Like just the notion that the rose thorns would cause her to bleed if she could just tear her fleshy suit off like rubber in the final sequence. And just various other sci-fi elements that could have been clarified a little bit, like how the lead motorcyclist is able to find Adam Pearson right away, and yet they need 6 other motorcyclists and they still can't find her in the final act. So I guess my question was, leading into that, is why do you think this movie wasn't as successful as it perhaps should have been? Not that it was ever going to be a big blockbuster, but I do feel like it should have been more successful, and especially at the peak of Scarlett Johansson's sex appeal with this notoriety of all these nude scenes. Do you think the material was perhaps too broadly painted, or just too disturbing, or wasn't marketed well? Like, why do you think people didn't latch onto this? Did the sci-fi elements need more clarification, or was it just not marketed that well?
Go ahead, Paul. You can take this one first.
Ooh, there's a lot to think about there. Well, like I said, when I first started out, I really didn't get into this film until about an hour in, story-wise. So I think if an average person were to sit down and watch this and didn't want to watch something that was artistic or didn't have they just wanted to sit down and kind of have maybe like a Scarlett Johansson like drama movie, or maybe a Marvel movie, they would have just got bored with it. And I think a lot of people might have done that and just said, well, yeah, I guess she's naked, ha ha ha, and
Yeah.
that's worth it. But I don't think they have to, like, I had to, because I knew this was actually the first time I did watch the film. I tried watching the film about a year ago, and I rented a bunch of films because I wanted to go to a convention on the weekend, and I thought, oh, I'll be able to watch this film at the convention. Whoops. It started out with, oh, there's naked women. I'm going to close my laptop now, and I'm not going to watch that film. And then the weekend just got caught up, and so. But as I was watching this film the second time, it was like, okay, I've got to watch. I got to watch this. I don't know what the story is. Oh, that's interesting. I'll keep watching it. And oh, you lost me again. But oh, that's interesting too. I'll watch that. Oh yeah, she is naked. And then oh, now it's a story. Oh, now I understand what's going on. Oh my God, it's like, oh, that scene that I didn't understand now makes sense. Oh my God, and that's how I felt as I was watching the movie. And how do you market something like that? You can't put that in the back of a box saying, you're gonna hate. You're probably not going to understand the first hour of it, but if you get past it, you're going to understand it all, and you're going to love it. So, I don't know. I'm
It's
rambling.
a film.
No, you're not rambling. That's awesome, man.
I'll say it's not meant for. It's a film that's not meant for wide release. It's not meant for mainstream. And this is, please, I am not trying to say anything about your mainstream movie audience, but this is not a mainstream film. This is not a film that's made for a mass audience, because you're, as a casual viewer, they're going to watch this and they're going to get bored, or they're going to lose interest because there's very little dialogue, not a lot of action. There's a lot of nuanced things going on. I've seen people call the film pretentious, thinking it's trying to be too artsy.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Which I don't think, but I've seen people call it. There's people that just downright hate the film, which I can also see. I can see, because this is just one of those, odd, unusual films that is, the person was the director and the writer and the artists, everyone involved was telling a story, but they weren't telling a story necessarily that they knew was going to be a commercial success. I can't believe that they were making this film thinking, oh, this is going to be like, we're gonna beat out Avengers, we're gonna, no, it's an indie film, it's an art film, it's one of those things that are meant to be not defined. I mean, we're trying to describe it tonight, but but it's one of those where it's almost too subtle, though, in a lot of ways for many people, and it's good. It will turn, and I can see how it turned many people off, because it's so subtle to the point, for most of it, that first hour, and a lot of people turn it off after that. And then you finish, and then the way it closes with the guy alone in the woods and the attempted rape, and suddenly she reveals her true form and she's set on fire. And, the way it ends, you're just like, holy crap. This was my first viewing, and I did not expect it to go where it went, in a good way.
Yeah.
But again, that can turn a lot of people off. So I think it wasn't a commercial success because this is not a film that's made to be a commercial success. I mean, no filmmaker wants to hear that, but it's true. It's made to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
And whether they make full money or budget on it is second to the story that the director's trying to make. Either they're trying to show off how artsy they are, or they're actually trying to tell the true story. I got to take it at face value and think there's honesty in this film, and they're trying to just tell a story in a unique way so that it can be open to interpretation, to cause discussions like we're having tonight. But films that usually do that aren't always, a lot of times, aren't commercial successes because of that. Because, I mean, that's why it surprised me. It's nowhere near on this level, but Arrival surprised me because while it's got a narrative, it's got a lot of subtlety and obscurity to it in a lot of ways, and nuance. So, I was surprised they got that film as wide release as it did. Under the Skin, I don't think got that huge of a release. It's lived on rental and video on demand and such, and it is, I guess you could say, is a cult film. It's just made completely different than your normal stuff, and that's why I think it wasn't a success, because it was so different and out there that you turn a lot of people away. And it just happens that way because everybody's tastes are different. But when you get really artsy, it could turn even more of your audience away, because people, tend to go to the movies, just a lot of them, just for entertainment. And this isn't a film made for entertainment.
But
and that's not slamming it. Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, does that justify what Hollywood distribution companies are doing with films? Like they don't support the artsy films like we would want them to, because they'll point at this film and see, this was not a commercial success. We don't want to back non-commercial ventures. So how do you convince Hollywood that they should continue doing so?
They're not going to.
They're never going to.
It's saved for the art house and limited release, or released enough so it can qualify for possibly an Academy Award, because uh, because we've got other films. This isn't the first kind of obscure one. Just recently, that was popular in a lot of my circles, but not so popular with mainstream audiences, was The Neon Demon. There are people that got that film, and there's people that hate that film. you, but you get that even with a couple of the, was it Only God Forgives?
That was his previous movie before that. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of the Nicholas Winding Refn, I'm mispronouncing that, or there was Lars von Trier's another one.
Yeah.
Who I'm surprised some of his stuff gets out there because it's obscure and artsy. And those films aren't exactly commercial successes. But they're ones that many people who are looking for something completely different, something surreal, some kind of different cinematic experience go to, but it's not your main audience, your main money-making audience that will seek these films out. And I think that's why these types of films, they may not become box office successes, but are still recognized either by those who actually are creating the art, the Academy or BAFTA. This one a BAFTA Film Award. And it won 24 other awards, and it was nominated for like 101 awards total. But it won. So you have acknowledgement out there. It might just not be box office acknowledgement, and that's I guess my rambling of it. But so that's what I think. And I don't think it's studios hate it. They just, very few studios take risk nowadays. We've had this before, and it's even more evident today since this year is a prime example. Every summer, every weekend, just about, is some kind of mega blockbuster tentpole sequel, remake, comic book meant to experience a big box office take its opening weekend. Almost every weekend this summer, there's going to be at least one, if not more, films like that. But they're remakes, they're comic book films, they're sequels, because those are known brands and going to get butts in the seat. Under the Skin, like you said, how the hell do you market this film without someone going into the movie and being completely disappointed because the trailer did not portray what this film actually is? And how many films out there, guys, have failed because of a bad trailer? Bad promotion. How many films have failed because of the way they're, promoted or shown? Think of with Loki, Hiddleston, Crimson, was it the Peak?
Right? Yeah.
Completely marketed wrong.
Yes.
It is a gothic romance film, and because it was Del Toro and because it had some horror elements in it, that's all you saw in every freaking trailer. And then you get into the movie and you realize this isn't a horror film. It has horror elements in it. It has one or two jump scares, but this is a gothic romance.
Yes,
this is a tragedy film. But
it's a ghost story at best. I mean, at the height of its horror qualities, it's a ghost story.
But that's not how it's portrayed in the trailers, in the marketing.
Absolutely not. No, you're right. I hadn't even thought about that, really. That's a really good point.
So really bring it around to Under the Skin, same thing. A film like this, how do you market it? Because no matter what you come up with, you're going to have an audience that's disappointed, and when that word of mouth gets out, it's gonna
kill it.
Kill it. It's going to kill it. So, yeah, films like this live in art house, live in independent theaters, that video on demand now with the digital age, because the people who go to those locations and the people who are looking at online are looking for that type of film and know that they're going to expect something unexpected. They're going to get something not concrete or defined. And it's nothing against the mainstream audience. That's just the way it is. it's there's films that are made for pure entertainment and money, and then there's films that are actually art, like deep art.
Haha. Criterion worthy material.
Exactly. Criterion worthy material. You look at a lot of the films Criterion came out with. I mean, I look at their catalog and I look at like half of the films, go, what the like, what film is this? You know, and why is it getting Criterion? Because you got all these features. I don't even know what the hell this, a lot of, those rare foreign films or they're lost for, and it's great that they're doing that. But at the same time, you look at that going, and there's a reason why I wanted to do Under the Skin tonight, and we'll wrap it up here. The reason I wanted to do this film was because this was a film that was always on my, I should watch it. It looks quirky. It looks just odd, and this looks like a film that'd be up my alley because it looks odd. But I always passed it by, just because it was almost too odd, and I knew I would, need to be in the right frame of mind kind of to watch it. And after seeing her in Ghost in the Shell, which I refrained from my opinion on that film, it made me curious about how she was in this film. And this film, her performance was phenomenal. And this film is very, very unique, and for select folks who are looking for really that kind of unusual artsy type film, this is one of those. There's another one that came out last year that a lot of people thought was great, and it had big names in it, but I don't think it did that well in the box office. And it's on video on demand now, and my buddy just told me about it that I should see it. And I'm like, yeah, it's on my list. It's Swiss Army Man.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's an interesting film.
I have not seen it yet. It was a film that got a wider release, I think, because of the names in it. But just from the trailer and from what I've heard from people and the description, it boggles my mind that it got any type of wider release outside of just a few, select theaters.
Well, that film specifically, and not to diminish, how good it is, because I recommend seeing it, but there are some pretty, how do I say this? There are some pretty obvious jokes in there.
Sure. But
if that makes sense. I mean, not like fart type jokes, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, there are some pretty obvious jokes that if you're sitting in a theater with a bunch of teenagers, they could feasibly get a couple chuckles.
Right.
You know what I mean? That type of thing.
But again, though, that's a type of film that, like I said, I haven't seen it yet, but just from everything I've read on it and seen about it, it's quirky to where you're like, how do you really market a film like that and get a bunch of butts in the seat to pay for it? Because it's such an odd concept, an unusual arts type concept that it's going to be hard to market and get any type of big budget, big blockbuster pay at the box office. So just the way it is. So I'll quit babbling now about it, but I want to thank our panel tonight, and why don't we just go down really quick and give your recommendation of who you think would enjoy this type of film, and then also where they can find you at. Go ahead, Cole. Why don't you go first?
Well, I would recommend this to definitely fans of horror films. I don't think just the casual watcher of somebody who's looking for an art house type of movie might not enjoy this, because it is pretty dark. I do consider it to be a horror film, but it isn't the sort of horror sci-fi film that's about a dark alien from outer space, or body snatchers, or giant hissing creatures that ooze buckets of slime. And if only they could only be defeated if we could just blow up that damn spaceship. It's a movie about ideas. It really is. It's a movie about like creative concepts and nasty notions of what is really lurking under the skin of humanity, highlighted by a bunch of solid work from everybody involved. Johannesson, all of the actors in this movie do daring work. I appreciate the info on the process of making this, Mark. I didn't know that. I really do appreciate that because I'm a fan of this. I mean, this is top-notch, fantastic, like dazzlingly artistic filmmaking. It's like if Lisa Cholodenko directed Species. I mean, it's really that unique. And I can't say more than what Mark has said the past 5 minutes. I mean, you summed it up well. I recommend this to people who like to get the creeps, but want something different. You know, really, you want something to get under your skin. This is the movie, not to be confused with Under Our Skin, which is a documentary about Lyme disease, which, oh boy, if you really want the creeps and want down-to-earth sci-fi, check that out. But you can find me at Shadows and Lovers Productions, a couple of new movies on the horizon, The Last Great Horror Movie, which has been completed for 2/3 of a year, but is going to be out soon. Please just follow us on Shadows and Lovers Productions and check that out because that movie's done a lot for us and we're really, really proud of it. And also we're about to start principal photography on probably the most daring fucking thing we've ever done, a movie called Rise, which is, I would say probably the craziest thing I've ever done, and I'm excited about it. Also, if you just want to see some interesting digital art or keep up with secondhand horror news, I get my information like everybody else does on the net secondhand. You can follow me at Horror Roar, but I do put a lot of work into my digital art. So follow us there, and also follow the fine work of Mark and Paul, who work their asses off as well. So.
Thank you, Cole. And Paul, how about you with your recommendation of who you think you would recommend this film to and where they can find you at?
Okay. I would think that people that like the movie Species would probably not like this because it's a little too slow for them. But science fiction novel readers, the ones that like read Isaac Asimov, those type of stories, will get a kick out of this film. I think the point of this film to me is that you're not supposed to look at the skin. You're supposed to look underneath and enjoy the film and look at it from that standpoint. So people that believe in that kind of philosophy are the type of viewers that this film will appeal to. So if you want to, excuse me, if you want to read my reviews, you can find me at forsakenfilmreviews.wordpress.com. If you want to hear me, you can hear me on Astro Radio Z at the Forsaken Film Review podcast, as well as the Film Jerks 2.0 podcast. And if you want to support independent horror films along with me, then check out newhorrorfest.com.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And as always, you can find links for them on specialmarkproductions.com. Check out our new Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/SMPRD. Yes, that's right. We have one where we can interact with you more. There's a number of people on there already. We've had a lot of discussions about current episodes and what people want to see, and let your voice be heard there. Otherwise, we have a couple pages on Facebook as well. But links to all that are at specialmarkproductions.com, along with our archive of the Spoiler Room, which you can also find on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. We appreciate everyone out there listening, our new listeners and returning ones. We appreciate every single one of you and your support. We're growing all the time, and that's because of folks like you and these wonderful folks that join me every week in the Spoiler Room. So we're going to just wrap it up here and say good night, gentlemen.
Good night. Thanks for listening, guys.